Cool Gamer. Hey, Tina. Hey, Kimmy. You are not in there. What are you doing in my cupboard? Seriously? Idiot. Well, Claire's in the cupboard. What are you doing? I see you. Oh, it's Dilly. What the hell are you doing in there? Where'd your sister go? You're both in there? It's- Oh, I didn't put the pictures in last night, did I? No, of course I didn't. God, I'm bad for that. Put that out so I don't forget this time. It's a fun place to be. She's looking for the nip. Little drunk. The nip's in the cupboard, and she knows that. It's up high in the cupboard, and she'll just climb on the counter and then on the fridge and then open it with her paw and help herself. I don't know why she's in the cup. What are you doing? It's like, yeah, you're nuts. I know, I've been going all day. I am tired. Hey, autistic. Oh, don't worry about it. Please don't worry about it. That would be so beautiful. I can't wait to ever see a little nippo. That'd be awesome watching the ocean from the balcony. Two of my cats love the nip. Claire doesn't. She barely ever, ever, ever. Hey, Zuna, she barely ever, 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 ever goes for it. Well, I've been in Brockville almost all day trying to get my stuff done. Hey, Brenda's close. Okay, now we're on chapter 9. 30th September 1888, and this one is the murder of Catherine Eddowes. So it's a new one. How are we up to now? How many? I think there's what, 5 now? There's Martha, Annie Chapman, Martha Tabram, Elizabeth Stride. So wait, maybe 4. Okay, so the murders committed in the early hours of Saturday, 30th September 1888, are best remembered and usually referred to as the double event, an affiliation directly originating from the Saucy Jackie postcard of 1 October 1888, in which the two murders are referred to in this way. The murder of Catherine Eddowes was committed in Mitre Square, Aldgate, in the City of London, and therefore came under the jurisdiction of the City of London Police, not the Metropolitan Police, who were investigating the other murders. However, any objective study should examine each crime as a separate event, whilst still bearing the other in mind. The main report referring to this murder is dated 27th October 1888 from Inspector James Macmillan, head of the Detective Department, City of London Police. The cover and report are as follows. I beg to report with reference to the recent murders in Whitechapel that, acting upon stringent orders issued by the Commissioner with a view to preventing, if possible, a repetition of the murders which had previously been committed in Whitechapel, and to keep close observation upon all prostitutes frequenting public houses and walking the streets. Extra men in plain clothes have been employed by this department since August last to patrol the eastern portion of the city. On the 30th of September at 1:45 a.m., a woman since identified as Catherine Eddowes was found with her throat cut and disemboweled in Mitre Square. Wow. Aldgate, about 300 yards from the city boundary. Sounds like he's just getting worse. You know what I mean? Like one almost had her head taken off, disemboweled, intestine. Ugh. Seriously, Claire? She's punched my dog. The constable who found the body immediately sent for a surgeon and also to the police station at Bishopgate Street, and Inspector Collard was on the spot in a few minutes. Detective Constable Hulse, Marriott, and Outram, who had been searching the passages of the houses in the immediate neighborhood of the spot where the murder was committed and where the doors are left open all night. She's gonna get you. Leave her alone, Jack. On hearing of the murder at 1:55 a.m., at once started off in various directions to look for suspected persons. The officer Hulse went into the direction of the Whitechapel and passed through Goldstone Street, where part of the deceased's apron was subsequently found at 2 a.m. On returning to the square, he heard that part of an apron stained with blood had been found in Goldstone Street. He then went with D.S. Lawley and D.C. Hunt to Leman Street Station and from thence to Goldstone Street, where the spot at which the apron was found was pointed out to him. On the wall above it was written in chalk. Oh, you guys, why are you all over the place? Did Leland give you nip? Bad, 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 bad. Oh my God, hey, Teresa. The dog probably deserved it. I don't know. Yeah. Jesus. Jack, shut up. So this is the writing again. It says, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Halsey remained by the writing, and Lawley and Hunt returned to Mitre Square. In the meantime, I had been informed of the murder and arrived at the detective office at 3:45 a.m. After ascertaining from SS, I was going to say Lizard, but it's Izzard, what steps he had taken in consequence of it. I wired to Scotland Yard, informing the Metropolitan Police of the murder, and went to DS Downs, to Bishopgate Station, and from thence to Mitre Square. I there found Major Smith, Superintendent Foster, Inspector Collard, and several detective officers. Lawley and Hunt informed me of the finding of the apron and the writing on the wall, the latter of which I ordered to be photographed and directed the officers to return at once and search the model dwellings and lodging houses in the neighborhood. I then went to mortuary in Golden Lane, where the body had been taken by direction of Dr. Gordon Brown, and saw the piece of apron, which was found in Goldstone Street, compared to the piece the deceased was wearing, and it exactly corresponded. I then returned to the detective office and had telegraphed to the divisions and Metropolitan Police a description of the murdered woman and her clothing. Additional officers had then arrived and they were sent out in various directions to make inquiry. Just one second. Additional officers had then arrived and they were sent out in various directions to make an inquiry. On Monday, the 1st October, on the recommendation of the commissioner, the Lord Mayor authorized a reward of 500 to be offered. Printed bills were at once ordered and circulated, in response to which a great many communications have been received and are still coming in. So now, after 4 murders, they finally are giving a reward. I don't get it. It's like not having transportation on the Highway of Tears, and all those murders have been going on since the 70s. Inquiry was also made with a view to get the deceased identified, and on the 3rd, it was ascertained that her name was Catherine Eddowes, and that she had been living with a man named Kelly at Cooney's lodging house, Flower and Dean Street, Spitalfields. She had lived with Kelly for 7 or 8 years, prior to which she had lived with a man named Thomas Conway, a pensioner for about 20 years, and had 3 children by him, 2 sons and a daughter. But Conway was eventually compelled to leave her on account of her drunken and immoral habits. All these girls are drunks. But then again, I think it was you, Deb, that told me because it's so boring for them, so they just drink. They must have like hell of a tolerance. Considerable difficulty was experienced in finding Conway in consequence of his having enlisted in the name of Thomas Quinn. He was found, however, also the 3 children and 2 sisters of Catherine Eddowes. On Thursday the 4th, an inquest was held at the mortuary by F.H. Langham, the, the crooner, but they meant to say coroner, and a jury, and adjourned till the 11th instant. when a verdict of willful murder against some person unknown was returned. Every effort has been made to trace the murderer, but up to the present without success. Inquiry has been made respecting persons in almost every class of society, and I have sent officers to all the lunatic asylums in London to make inquiry respecting persons recently admitted or discharged, many persons being of opinion that these crimes are of too revolting a character to have been committed by a sane person. I don't know, I think I'd have to agree with that. Yeah, that was I knew it was you. That's how they lived. That's what they did in order to live. Prostitution wasn't a proud profession, and they did it out of necessity. But, I don't think the women were doing it while married because the husbands provided, right? They just seriously turned into some drunks, and that's why they're kicked out, and then they had to prostitute because that was a means for them. Yeah, it was a necessity. Wow. The inquiry is still being actively followed up, but the police are at a great disadvantage in this case in consequence of the want of identity. No one having seen the deceased from the time she was discharged from Bishopgate Station until her body was found at 1:45 a.m., except three gentlemen who were leaving the Imperial Club in Duke Street at 1:35 a.m., and who state that, to the best of their belief, they saw her with a man in Church Passage at the time, but took no particular notice of them. One of the gentlemen, Mr. Lewin, of 79 Fenchurch Street, who was nearest to the man and woman and saw most of them, says he does not think he would know the man again, and he did not see the woman's face. No other person can be found who saw either of them. The murderer would seem to have been only a few minutes in the city, having just come from Berners Street and returned at once to Whitechapel via Goldstone Street, where the apron was found. On the 16th, Mr. Lusk, number 1 Alderney Road, Mile End, chairman of the East End Vigilance Committee, received by post a packet containing half of a kidney and a letter, a photograph copy of which I attach hereto. He did not attach any importance to it at the time, but on mentioning the matter to other members of the committee on the 18th, they advised him to shew the piece of kidney to the medical man. He accordingly took it to Mr. Reed, 56 Mile End Road, and subsequently to Dr. Openshaw of the London Hospital, both of whom expressed their opinion that it was a portion of the kidney of a human being. Wow. The kidney was forwarded to his office and the letter to Scotland Yard. Chief Inspector Swanson having lent me the letter on the 20th, I had it photographed and returned to him on the 24th. The kidney had been examined by Dr. Gordon Brown, who is of opinion that it is human. Every effort is being made to trace the sender, but it is not desirable that publicity should be given to the doctor's opinion or the steps that are being taken in consequence. It might turn out, after all, to be the act of a medical student who would have no difficulty in obtaining the organ in question. The department is cooperating with the Metropolitan Police in the matter, and Chief Inspector Swanson and I meet daily and confer on the subject. Signed, Jazz Macmillan, Inspector. So now we're on to the kidneys. Yeah, but why would a medical student? Because they say it might turn out, after all, to be the act of a medical student would have no difficulty in obtaining the organ in question. Oh, as the murderer, I'm assuming. This report is followed by a Home Office minute sheet, which makes very interesting reading. It indicates that the government officials felt that they were not being told the full facts. You scared me. It sounds weird, your pants with my hearing aids in. It sounds like an earthquake. With you walking like that and the sound of your feet with my hearing aids in and those shoes on, it sounds like a freaking earthquake. Mr. Murdoch, the report tells very little. The city police are wholly at fault as regards the detection of the murderer. 2, the word on the wall was Jews, not Juwes. And then there's a marginal note that says, not so I believe JL. This is important unless it a mere clerical error. Number 3, the kidney sent to Mr. Lusk is human. The printed report of the inquest contains much more information than this. They evidently want to tell us something. There's another marginal note and it says, I don't think so, GL. What the hell's GL? A, Did the writing on the wall resemble Jack the Ripper's or the enclosed? That's the first time they ever called him Jack the Ripper. It's like I'm missing a chapter or something, but I know we're not. Did the writing on the wall resemble Jack the Ripper's or the enclosed? B. Could the half kidney possibly be part of the victim's kidney? Mr. Lushington, have you any private information from the Metropolitan Police on the above points or a facsimile of Jack the Ripper's letters? That was the first time they ever called him that. The reason why I keep saying that is because it's just poof, it's there. Because it leading up to it, I wasn't prepared. It is, I think, unadvisable to ask these questions officially, but when Mr. Matthews comes to town, I would advise that he should ask Sir J. Fraser to come to the HO. He will then have full particulars. This is followed by Sir James Fraser's, the City of London Police Commissioner's covering letter, forwarding the Macmillan report, which is dated 29th October 1888, to the Under Secretary of State. Sir, I have to acknowledge your letter of the 25th instant, and in reply to the inquiries contained therein, I beg to forward for the information of the Secretary of State the copy of report furnished to me by the Inspector of the Detective Department at his office, containing particulars of the recent murder of a woman in Mitre Square within the city, and of the steps since taken by the city police in connection therewith. I am, sir, your obedient servant, James Fraser. The report that follows this one is rather a lengthy one. You're telling me. Dated 6 November 1888, from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, covering the Mitre Square murder and an explanation why he thought it right to have the writing on the wall wiped out. It was received at the Home Office the same date and is minuted confidential and pressing. Sir, in reply to your letter of the 5th instant, I enclose a report of the circumstances of the Mitre Square murder, so far as they have come under the notice of the Metropolitan Police, and I now give an account regarding the erasing the writing on the wall in Goulston Street, which I have already partially explained to Mr. Matthews verbally. On the 30th September, on hearing of the Berners Street murder after visiting Commercial Street Station, I arrived at Lehman Street Station shortly before 5 a.m. and ascertained from Superintendent Arnold all that was known there relative to the two murders. The most pressing question at that moment was some writing on the wall in Goulston Street, evidently written with the intention of inflaming the public mind against the Jews, in which Mr. Arnold was, with a view to prevent serious disorder, proposed to obliterate it, and had sent down an inspector with a sponge for that purpose, telling him to await his arrival. I considered it desirable that I should decide this matter myself, as it was one involving so great a responsibility whether any action was taken or not. I accordingly went down to Goulston Street at once before going to the scene of the murder. It was just getting light. The public would be in the streets in a few minutes, in a neighborhood very much crowded on Sunday mornings by Jewish vendors and Christian purchasers from all parts of London. There were several police around the post when I arrived, both metropolitan and city. Yeah, so I figured back then, yeah. Wow. The writing was on the jamb of the open archway or doorway, visible to anybody in the street, and could not be covered up without danger of the covering being torn off at once. I don't understand why they wouldn't take a picture of it though, because they had to wait to get the sponge. Why wouldn't they just wait until they got the camera too? A discussion took place where the writing could be left covered up or otherwise or whether any portion of it could be left for an hour until it could be photographed. But after taking into consideration the excited state of the population in London generally at the time, the strong feeling which had been excited against the Jews, and the fact that in a short time there would be a large concourse of the people in the streets, and having before me the report that if it was left there, the house was likely to be racked, in which, from my own observation, I entirely concurred, I considered it desirable to obliterate the writing at once, having taken a copy of which I enclose a duplicate. Taken a copy of which I enclose a duplicate. of what it said because you didn't take a picture. It's World Health Day today. After having been to the scene of the murder, I went on to the police office and informed the chief superintendent of the reason why the writing had been obliterated. I may mention that so great was the feeling with regard to the Jews that on the 13th, the acting chief rabbi wrote to me on the subject of the spelling of the word Jews, on account of a newspaper asserting that this was a Jewish spelling in the Yiddish dialect. He added, in the present state of excitement, it is dangerous to the safety of the poor Jews in the East to allow such an assertion to remain uncontradicted. My community keenly appreciates your kindness, humane, and vigilant actions during this critical time. It may be realized, therefore, if the safety of the Jews in Whitechapel could be considered to be jeopardized 13 days after the murder by the question of the spelling of the word Jews, that might have happened to the Jews in the quarter that have writing been left intact. I do not hesitate myself to say that if the writing had been left, there would have been an onslaught upon the Jews. Property would have been wrecked, and lives would probably have been lost. And I was much gratified with the promptitude that with which the superintendent Arnold was prepared to act in the matter, if I had not been there. I have no doubt myself, whatever, that one of the principal objects of the reward offered by Mr. Montagu was to shew to the world that the Jews were desirous of having the Hanbury Street murder cleared up, and thus to direct from them the very strong feeling which was then growing up. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, C. Warren. This report is followed by the copy of the message taken by the Metropolitan Police as follows: the Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. This is followed by another lengthy report dated 6th November 1888 by Chief Inspector Donald S. Swanson. The subject is facts known to the Metropolitan Police respecting the murder in Mitre Square and writing on the wall. I beg to report that the facts concerning the murder in Mitre Square, which came to the knowledge of the Metropolitan Police, are as follows. 1:45 a.m., 30th September, Police Constable Watkins of the City Police discovered in Mitre Square the body of a woman, with her face mutilated almost beyond identity. Portion of the nose being cut off, the lobe of the right ear nearly severed, the face cut, the throat cut, and disemboweled. Jesus. The PC called to his assistance Mr. Morris, a night watchman and pensioner for Metropolitan Police, from premises looking on the square. A surgical aid was subsequently called in, short details of which will be given further on in this report. The city police have been made acquainted with the facts by PC Watkins, and following are the results of their inquiries so far as known to the Metropolitan Police. 1:30 a.m., the PC passed the spot where the body was found at 1:45 a.m., and there was nothing to be seen there at the time. I thought they said it was at 1:45 a.m. though when they saw it. I'm quite sure I read it was 1:45. Okay, over here it says 2:20. Yeah. Yeah, it says at 1:45 a.m. a woman since identified as Catherine Eddowes was found with her throat cut. But it's here, it says 1:45 a.m. and there was nothing to be seen at the time. Now I'm confused. Then at 1:35, so that was 1:45. 1:30, there's nothing. Oh, I'm an idiot. At 1:30 a.m., the PC passed the spot where the body was found at 1:45 a.m. Okay. Or no, yeah, I am. And there was nothing to be seen there at the time. 1:30 a.m., three Jews, one of whom is named Mr. Lewin, left a club in Duke Street, and Mr. Lemend saw a man talking to a woman in Church Passage, which leads directly to Mitre Square. The other two took but little notice and state they could not identify the man or the woman. And Mr. Lemend states that he could not identify the man, but also the woman stood with her back to him, with her hand, oh, Okay, they said hand, but they meant hand. On the man's breast, he it's supposed to be could, not identify the body, mutilated as it was, as that of the woman whose back he had seen, but to the best of his belief, the clothing of the deceased, which was black, was similar to that worn by the woman whom he had seen, and that was the full extent of his identity. 2:20 a.m. PC Long, the PC was drafted from A Division temporarily to assist H Division, stated that at the hour mentioned, he visited Goldstone street buildings and there was nothing there at that time. 2:55 a.m., he found in the bottom of the common stairs leading to number 108 to 119, Goldstone Street buildings, a piece of a blood-stained apron, and above it written in chalk the same words, the Jews, the men who will not be blamed for nothing, which he reported, and the city police were subsequently acquainted at the earliest moment when it was found that, beyond doubt, the piece of apron found corresponded exactly with the part missing from the body of the murdered woman. The surgeon, Dr. Brown, called the city police, and Dr. Phillips, who had been called by the Metropolitan Police in the cases of Hanbury Street and Berner Street, having made a post-mortem examination of the body, reported there was missing the left kidney and the uterus. Holy shit. And that the mutilation so far gave no evidence of any anatomical knowledge in the sense that it evidenced the hand of a qualified surgeon, so that the police could narrow their inquiries into certain classes of persons. On the other hand, as in Metropolitan Police cases, the medical evidence showed that the murder could have been committed by a person who had been a hunter, a butcher, or a slaughterman, as well as a student in surgery or a properly qualified surgeon. I would go with the surgeon myself. I get it's similar with animals and humans, but this is done meticulously. Like, you have to know what you're doing. The results of the city police inquiries were as follows. Beside the body were found some pawn tickets in a tin box. Do you know what that means, Deb? Pawn tickets, like pawn shop. Pawn tickets in a tin box, but upon tracing them, they are found to relate to pledges made by Catherine Eddowes, the deceased, who was separated from her husband and was living in adultery with a man named John Kelly, respecting whom inquiry was at once made by Metropolitan and City Police, the result of which was to shew clearly that he was not the murderer. Further, it shewed the deceased's name was Catherine Eddowes or Conway, who had been locked up for drunkenness at the Bishopgate Street Police Station at 8:45 p.m. the 29th, and being sober was discharged at 1 a.m. 30th. Inquiry was also made by the city and Metropolitan Police conjointly into the antecedents. I think it's supposed to be into her actions, because that doesn't make sense. And it was found that there did not exist amongst her relations or friends the slightest pretext for a motive to commit the murder. At the Goldstone Street buildings, where the portion of the bloodstained apron was found by the city police, made inquiry, but unsuccessfully, as their subsequent inquiries into matters of affecting persons suspected by correspondence or by statements of individuals at police stations. As yet without success, have been carried on with the knowledge of the Metropolitan Police, who, on the other hand, have daily acquainted the city police with the subjects and natures of their inquiries. Upon the discovery of the blurred chalk writing on the wall, written, although misspelled in the second word, in an ordinary hand, in the midst of locality principally inhabited by Jews of all nationalities, as well as English, and upon the wall of a common stairs leading to a number of tenements occupied almost exclusively by Jews, and the purport of the writing, as shown at page 3, was to throw blame upon the Jews. The commissioner deemed it advisable to have them rubbed out. Like, I get why they got rid of it. Oh, is that what it's oh, okay. It's alright, Teresa. I haven't slept at all. I'm all wired on caffeine. So when I'm done reading this, I'm gonna go to Giant Tiger, pick up some stuff. We're out of bread. And Pig ate all the cereal again. Apart from this, there was the fact that during police inquiries into the Bucks Row and Hanbury Street murders, a certain section of the press cast a great amount of suspicion upon a Jew named John Pizer, alias Leather Apron. Yeah, I could do that. Having been the murderer, whose movements at the dates and hours of those murders had been satisfactorily inquired into by Metropolitan Police, clearing him of any connection. There was also the fact that on the same morning another murder had been committed in the immediate vicinity of the Socialist Club in Berner Street, frequented by the Jews, considerations which, weighed in the balance with the evidence of chalk writing on the wall to bring home guilt to any person, were deemed the weightier of the two. To those police officers who saw the chalk writing, the handwriting of the now notorious letters to a newspaper agency bears no resemblance at all. Rewards were offered by the city police and by Mr. Montagu, and a vigilance committee formed presided over by Mr. Lusk of Alderney Road, Mile End, and it is to be regretted that the combined result has been that no information leading to the murder has ever been forthcoming. On the 18th October, Mr. Lusk brought a parcel which had been addressed to him to Leman Street. The parcel contained what appeared to be a portion of a kidney. He received it on 15th October and submitted it for examination, eventually to Dr. Openshaw, curator of London Hospital Museum, who pronounced it to be a human kidney. The kidney was at once handed over to the police station, and the result of the combined medical opinion they have taken upon it is that it is the kidney of a human adult, not charged with a fluid, as it would have been in the case of a body handed over for purposes of dissection to a hospital, but rather as it would be in a case where it was taken from the body not so destined. In other words, similar kidneys might and could be obtained from any dead person upon whom a post-mortem had been made from any cause by students or dissecting room porter. Was there any such P-mort, post-mortem, I'm assuming, made within a week in the E or EC districts? The kidney, or rather portion of the kidney, was accompanied by a letter couched as follows. Oh boy. Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman. Oh, okay, his writing's fucked up. Can't even spell kidney right. I don't know what that means. Ew. Okay, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you could only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch Me When You Can, Mr. Lusk. Oof. He ate it. Leila. Oh, Leila's not even here. Sorry, I gotta let my doggy in. Not sure why he's barking. Leland was right there. Weirdo. The postmarks upon the parcel are so indistinct that it cannot be said whether the parcel was posted in the E or EC districts, and there is no envelope to the letter, and the city police are therefore unable to prosecute any inquiries upon it. The remaining inquiries of the city police are merged into those of the Metropolitan Police, each force cordially communicating to the other daily the nature and subject of their inquiries. The foregoing are the facts so far as known to Metropolitan Police relating to the murder in Meadow Square. Donald S. Swanson. From Donald S. Swanson. As regards Mr. Lusk receiving part of a human kidney and the from hell letter. Okay, there is the from hell letter in here. I'm pretty sure I tried, or I was gonna try and put it in my community tab, but it's so hard to read. Yeah, there's a bunch of them in here. They're just so hard to read. I can read them, but I'm not sure if you guys can. Like, that's one of them. An actual picture of it. You have to zoom in on it. That one's a Dear Boss letter from Jack the Ripper. And then this is the famous Lusk letter, received in a parcel which also contained a piece of human kidney. And his writing is so messed up. He can't spell. He spells kidney, Kidne. Okay, I'm glad that that was the letter. Okay, I just read it too. Just want to make sure. But they have pictures of the actual letters. That's awesome. So as regards to Mr. Lusk receiving part of a human kidney and the From Hell letter on 16th October 1888, it is worth giving at this point two press reports containing further information about the incident. The Daily Telegraph of Saturday 20th October 1888 reported, a statement which apparently gives a clue to the sender of the strange package received by Mr. Lusk was made last night by Miss Emily Marsh. That same name. Yeah, it goes blurry. That's the same name as the girl of It. Emily Marsh, Emily Marsh. So, whose father carries on business in the leather trade at 218 Jubilee Street, Mile End Road? In Mr. Marsh's absence, Miss Marsh was in the front shop shortly after 1 o'clock on Monday last, when a stranger dressed in clerical costume entered and, referring to the reward bill in the window, asked for the address of Mr. Lusk. Described therein as the president of the Vigilance Committee, Miss Marsh at once referred the man to Mr. J. Aarons, the treasurer of the committee, who resides at the corner of Jubilee Street and Mile End Road, a distance of about 30 yards. The man, however, said he did not wish to go there, and Miss Marsh thereupon produced a newspaper in which Mr. Lusk's address was given as Alderney Road, Globe Road, no number being mentioned. She requested the stranger to read the address, but he declined, saying, "Read it out," and proceeded to write something in his pocketbook, keeping his head down meanwhile. He subsequently left the shop after thanking the young lady for the information, but not before Miss March, alarmed by the man's appearance, had sent the shop boy, John Cormack, to see that all was right. This lad, as well as Miss Marsh, give a full description of the man, while Mr. Marsh, who happened to come along at the same time, also encountered him on the pavement outside. The stranger is described as a man of some 45 years of age, fully 6 feet in height, slimly built. He wore a soft felt black hat, drawn over his forehead, a stand-up collar, and a very long black single-breasted overcoat, with a Prussian or clerical collar partly turned up. His face was of a sallow type, and he had a dark beard and mustache. The man spoke with what was taken to be an Irish accent. No importance was attached to the incident until Miss March read of the receipt by Mr. Lusk of a strange parcel, and then it occurred to her that the stranger might be the person who had dispatched it. His inquiry was made at 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon, and Mr. Lusk received the package at 8 p.m. the next day. The address on the package, curiously enough, gives no number in Alderney Road, a piece of information which Miss March could not supply. It appears that, on leaving the shop, the man went right by Mr. Aaron's house, but did not call. Mr. Lusk has been informed of the circumstances, and states that no person answering the description has called on him, nor does he know anyone at all like the man in question. The Sunday Times, October 21st, 1888, and it contains the following report. The Whitechapel tragedies. Notwithstanding the sensational rumors which were current yesterday afternoon, there's a little to chronicle from the scene of the Whitechapel tragedies. So he's an Irish serial killer doctor who eats human flesh. Well, kidneys.
You know,
Yes.
it is really cool outside because outside, instead of the sun, it's the clouds that are lighting up the sky.
Is it gonna rain?
No, it's really bright outside, and the clouds are the ones that are lighting up the sky. It's really cool.
Neat. Yeah, it seems like it. So there's little to chronicle from the scene of the Whitechapel tragedies. The police have now turned their directions with a sponge for the purpose of removing the writing when Commissioner arrived at the scene, T. Arnold. On 29 September, Tom Building of the Central News Limited sent to the police a letter that they had received the 27th September. His letter read, "The Central News Limited. The editor presents his compliments to Mr. Williamson and begs to inform him the enclosed was sent to Central News 2 days ago and was treated as a joke." Okay. This is the accompanying letter, and it was in an envelope addressed to the boss, Central News Office, London City, and it was postmarked SP 2788 and posted in London, EC. Right. So this is the letter that was posted to who? So the news got the letter, and then he addressed it the boss. Okay. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit gripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with it, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Ew. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha, ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the ladies' ears off and send them to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly. This is the first time he signs his name, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. Okay. On October 1st, 1888, a postcard addressed to Central News Office says, oh, another Jack the Ripper letter. I wasn't coddling. No, I wasn't codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event. This time number one squealed a bit. Couldn't finish straight off. Had no time to get ears for police. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I go to work again. Jack the Ripper. He's taunting the shit out of these guys. On 5th October, TJ Bulling of the Central News again communicated with Chief Constable Williamson. Dear Mr. Williamson, at 5 minutes to 9 o'clock tonight, we received the following letter, the envelope of which I enclosed, by which you will see it is in the same handwriting as the previous communications. Dear friend, in the name of God, hear me. I swear I did not kill the female whose body was found at Whitehall. If she was an honest woman, I will hunt down the destroyer, her murderer. If she was a whore, God will bless the hand that slew her. For the women of Moab and Midian shall die, and their blood shall mingle with the dust. I never harm any others, or the divine power that protects and helps me in my grand work. In my grand work would quit forever. Do as I do, and the light of glory shall shine upon you. I must get to work tomorrow. Treble event this time. Yes, yes, 3 must be ripped. We'll send you a bit of face by post. I promise this dear old boss. The police now reckon my work as a practical joke. Well, well, Jackie's a very practical joker. Ha ha, keep this back till 3 are wiped out and you can show the cold meat. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Howdy. I've never seen or heard any of these letters ever. Thus the nickname. Okay, now they talk about the nickname. I was gonna say, because I haven't heard it until used to. So thus the nickname Jack the Ripper was introduced to the world and would never be forgotten. So it started with the letters, but the author put it before we got the letters. That's why I was like, what? Did I miss something? It would pervade the influence all aspects of the case from that day on. The nickname Leather Apron has been lost to the sensational press after the arrest and clearing of Pizer. Now there was a much better one to take its place. The only police officer known to have named the press man the police thought was responsible for the sensational new name was John George Littlechild, lately chief inspector of the special branch, and he named Tom Bullen of the Central News Agency, forwarder of the correspondence to the police in the Littlechild letter. He writes, with regard to the term Jack the Ripper, it was generally believed at the Yard that Tom Bullen of the Central News was the originator, but it's probable Moore, who was his chief, was the inventor. It was a smart piece of journalistic work. No journalist of my time got such privileges from Scotland Yard as Bullen. Mr. James Munro, when assistant commissioner and afterwards commissioner, relied on his integrity. The Times of Tuesday, 2nd October 1888 reported, the excitement caused by the murders committed early on Sunday morning in Berners Street, Commercial Road, and Mitre Square, Aldgate, has in no way abated. In the East End, statements and rumors of the most extraordinary nature were in circulation yesterday respecting conversations which certain persons, male and female, had had with 2 or 3 suspicious-looking men an hour or so before the crimes were committed. The purport of the statements in question being to connect the latter individuals with the outrages. Nothing, however, can be extracted from these statements of sufficient importance to form any clue. A few arrests have been made by the Metropolitan Police, but none had been made by the City Police up to a late hour last night. The authorities are now fully on the alert in the localities of the murders, and as stated below, it has been decided by the City Police to offer a reward for the discovery of the assassin. So the City Police hasn't done shit until now, after 4 murders. It is satisfactory to announce that one discovery, at least, has been made which, in the hands of efficient detectives, should prove an important clue to the lurking place of the murderer, for the belief is now generally entertained in official quarters that no one person alone is attributable. The series of crimes which in the last few weeks have horrified and alarmed the public. It appears that after perpetrating his foul work in Mitre Square, he miscreant retraced his steps towards the scene of the crime which he has committed an hour or so earlier. As stated in the particulars given in the Times of yesterday, part of the attire of the unfortunate woman who was butchered in Mitre Square consisted of a portion of coarse white apron, which was found loosely hanging about the neck. A piece of this apron had been torn away by the villain, who, in proceeding to his destination further east after leaving the city boundary, presumably used it to wipe his hands or his knife on, and then threw it away. It was picked up in Goulston Street very shortly after the second murder had been committed, and it was brought to the mortuary by Dr. Phillips soon after the body had been removed there. It was covered with blood and was found to fit in the portion of apron which had been left by the murderer on his victim. Goulston Street, it may be stated, is a broad thoroughfare running parallel with a commercial road, and is off the main Whitechapel Road, and the spot where the piece of apron was picked up is about a third of a mile from Mitre Square. By the direct and open route, it is 1,550 feet, but it can be approached through several small streets, making the distance about 1,600 feet. These measurements were taken yesterday. The only other clues in the possession of the police are 2 pawnbrokers' tickets, which were found lying close to the spot where the Mitre Square murder was discovered, and a knife which was picked up by a police constable in the Whitechapel Road early yesterday morning. It is described as a black handle 10 inches long, keen as a razor, and pointed like a carving knife. The pawn tickets are believed to have belonged to the woman. They were in a small tin box and related to pledges which have been made in August of. Oh my god, jeez, must be cat hair. Itchy. There's a small tin box and related to pledges have been made in August of a pair of boots and a man's shirt. The tickets have been made out in 2 names, Emily Burrell and Anne Kelly, and the articles have been pawned for 1 S and 6 days. respectively, of Mr. Jones of Church Street, Spitalfields, who, however, cannot identify the woman as having made the pledges. Photographs of the ill-fated creature were taken at the city mortuary in Golden Lane both before and after the postmortem examination, after which the features, which already reported in the Times, had been brutally cut about, were rendered more lifelike by the doctors. Up to a late hour last night, however, had not been identified, though several persons having missed relatives or friends had been taken to see it by the police. Yesterday morning, shortly after 10 o'clock, in an interview respecting the Mitre Square murder took place between Mr. M. William, the inspector of the City Detective Department, Superintendent Foster, and Inspector Collard, and the city coroner, who has arranged to hold the inquest on Thursday morning. It is being hoped that the woman may be identified in the meantime. The plans taken by Mr. F. W. Foster of Old Jewry of the scene of the outrage immediately after it was discovered were submitted to the coroner, and Mr. Foster will be one of the witnesses at the inquest. This is for the newspaper. The Times of Wednesday, 3rd October 1888 reported. Great satisfaction was expressed yesterday throughout the city at the promptness with which the Lord Mayor, on the part of the corporation, and at the instance of Colonel Sir James Fraser, the Commissioner of the City Police, had offered a reward for the discovery and conviction of the murderer or murderers of the woman who was found butchered in Mitre Square. Oh, so there's only one reward for Catherine Eddowes? That's it? Wow. There is a reason to believe that the identification of the victim has been established. It appears that on Sunday night, a woman who gave the name of Mary Ann Kelly. Oh, we're on this one too now? Pretty sure she was the last. So she gave the name of Mary Ann Kelly, and her address as number 6 Fashion Street, Spitalfields, was taken intoxicated to the Bishopgate Street police station. It is customary in such cases for a constable who may be on duty at the station to visit at frequent intervals the person detained to see how he or she may be progressing. The woman in question was attended to in the manor on Saturday night by Reserve Constable Hutt, who noticed that she had on a pair of men's boots, and at the same time he observed the bonnet which she was wearing, as well as her attire generally. Having become sufficiently sober to be discharged, the woman was liberated on Sunday morning at 1 o'clock. When she stated that she was afraid to go home, it was understood on account of her husband. Hutt saw her leave the station and observed that instead of going to the direction of Spitalfields, she turned to the left towards Houndsditch and consequently in the direction of Mitre Square. After the examination of the body of the murdered woman in City Mortuary in Golden Lane, the boots and bonnet were left there with the keeper, the rest of the clothing being taken to the police station. On going to the mortuary, Hutt saw the boots and bonnet and identified them as belonging to the woman who had been detained at the police station. He then gave a general description of the rest of her dress, and on examination being made afterwards at the police station, where, as above stated, the other clothing had been taken, it was found to correspond fairly accurately with his account. Another constable named Simons has also seen the body, and he believes too that it is the woman who was discharged at 1 o'clock on Sunday morning from the Bishopgate Street police station. Inquiries have been made by the city police for Mary Ann Kelly at the address given in Fashion Street, but no one person answering the description of the woman who was detained is known there. It is, however, a common practice for persons under detention to give false names up in addresses. Up to a late hour last night, no arrests have been made in the connection with the murders by the city police. No clues, in addition to the very slender ones mentioned by the Times yesterday, have been discovered, but it's fully believed by the police that the lurking place of the murderer is not very far from the scenes of his atrocious crimes. The same newspaper carried an additional report on the identification of Eddowes, Catherine Eddowes. The Mitre Square victim identified. Huh? Last night between 9 and 10 o'clock, a laboring man, given the name of John Kelly, 55 Flower and Dean Street, a common lodging house, entered the Bishopgate Street police station and stated that from what he had been reading in the newspapers, he believed that the woman who had been murdered in Mitre Square was his wife. Well, then who the fuck is Catherine Eddowes? I'm confused. Or is this a new one? I don't know. Okay, it must be a new one then. So he entered the Bishopgate Street Police Station and stated from what he had been reading in the newspapers, he believed that this woman who had been murdered in Martyr Square was his wife. He was at once taken by Sergeant Miles to the mortuary in Golden Lane and there identified her as the woman to whom he subsequently admitted he was not married, but with whom he had cohabited for 7 years. Major Henry Smith, the Assistant Commissioner of the City Police, and Superintendent Foster were telegraphed for and immediately went to the Bishopgate Street Station. Kelly, who was considerably affected, spoke quite unreservedly and gave a full statement as to his own movements and those of the ill-fated woman. As to whose identity, he was quite positive. In this statement, he was borne out by the deputy of the lodging house, Frederick Wilkinson, who knew this poor woman quite well and who had just seen the body. Kelly, in answer to questions, stated that the last time he saw her, referring to her as Kate, was on Saturday afternoon. The last meal she had with him was breakfast, which had been obtained by the pledging of his boots for the 2 cents in 6 days. Asked if he could explain how it was that she was out so late on Saturday night, he replied that he could not say. He left her in the afternoon, believing that she would return to him at the lodging house in Flower and Dean Street. He had told her to go and see her daughter and try to get the price of a bed for the night. Who is her daughter? He was asked, to which he replied, a married woman. She's married to a gunmaker and they live somewhere in Bermondsey, in King Street, I think it's called, but I never went there. He was then asked if he knew the murdered woman's name and if he could explain the meaning of the initials TC on her arm. He at once replied that Thomas Conway was the name of her husband, but he could not state whether Conway was dead or alive, or how long, in the latter case, she had been living away from him. Being asked why he had not made inquiries before relative to her absence on Saturday night and since, he replied that he thought she had gotten into some trouble and had been locked up, and he thought he had better wait. She was given to drinking. He had cautioned her not to stay out late at night on account of the previous murders. The reason which had induced him at length to call the police station was his having read about the pawn tickets being found near the murdered woman relating to the pledges in the names of Kelly and Burrell. Further questioned on this point, he repeated the references to the pledging of his boots with a pawnbroker named Jones up Church Street and stated that the ticket for the other article, a flannel shirt, pledged in the name of Emily Burrell, had been given to them by the latter, who had been with them hopping, and who had slept in the same barn with them. He further stated that he and the murdered woman were both Londoners and that the latter was born at Bermondsey. They had just returned from hopping at a place where he was understood to call Hunton, adding that it was about 2 miles from Coxheath in Kent. To the question how he obtained his living, he replied, I job about the markets now. He added that he had worked pretty constantly for a fruit salesman named Lander for over 12 years. He and Kate had, he said, gone through many hardships together. But while she was with him, he would not let her do anything bad. He was asked if he knew whether the woman had any relatives besides her daughter mentioned, to which he replied that Kate's sister was living in Thrall Street, Spitalfields, with a man who sold farthing books in Liverpool Street. An officer was dispatched from the station for the ward beadle, who brought notices in blank with him, and 2 of them were filled up and served on Kelly and Wilkinson to attend the inquest, which, as already announced, will be held tomorrow at the city mortuary. Kelly is a man of about 40 years of age, of medium height, and judging from his appearance, is a poor but hardworking man. He was quite sober. It will be seen from his statements that the belief which was expressed earlier in the day by the police constables Hutt and Simons, to which reference is made elsewhere as to the identity of the murdered woman with the female who had been detained for drunkenness at Bishopgate Street Station, and who was discharged about an hour before the murder was committed, is confirmed. The boots and the shirt referred to by Kelly as being in pledge are now in the possession of the police, having been obtained from the pawnbroker. While Kelly was making a statement, a man entered the station and made a confession that he was the murderer. He strongly objected to being searched, but this was done with the aid of 2 or 3 constables. Major Smith, who was present at the station, attaches no importance to the confusion, the man having been drinking and having nothing of incriminating nature in his possession. He was, however, detained. All right, so that's the end of that. Next will be chapter 10, and again, the Catherine Eddowes inquest. Not even done. I'm just trying to see if there's any photos I need to put. Oh, it's Mary Jane Kelly. Okay, that one we haven't done yet. So yeah, I'm not gonna do any pictures with that one. All right, I should go. I have an hour to go to the store. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow. I got some new things to talk about. The acid murders, and then there was the other serial killer from New York, and having problems with Google. No, I'm not. Oh shoot, what page am I on? 222. Alrighty, that's the page number 222 then. All right, you guys have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow. Bye.